the devil and the dragon and his angels fought back. Is that a good connection? We don't know. We're not told. But here's the point. The passage clearly refers to the first coming of the Messiah, because the Psalm 2, is quoted in verse 5. The woman gave birth to a male child who is to rule the nations with a rod of iron. The birth of the Messiah provokes the war in heaven. It's nothing before humans were created or some primeval event or whatever, but somehow we wind up with this third of the angels mythology being associated with the creation event or something primeval, when this is the only passage you have it. And so when I looked at this at one point, I started doing some research, and I discovered that there were certain scholars who looked at this passage because of the celestial imagery here. 12 stars, sun, moon, under her feet, the sun in her midst, and all this kind of stuff. And they pointed out that this was stock vocabulary. This is normative descriptions for the heavens, celestial objects. So in other words, when John, earlier in the chapter, earlier in the book, is talking about looking into the heavens and seeing things, he actually means what he says, that there's something going on. And so he sees a great sign in heaven, a woman clothed with the sun. He's looking at the sky. I mean, this is, again, what I was reading, and I thought, well, that kind of makes sense. I mean, given all the celestial language here. But so I wonder what would the point be? And it's clearly connected with the birth of the Messiah. So, long story short, if you actually take the passage for what it says, you got a woman in heaven. The only collection of stars that it's the woman is the constellation Virgo and Virgin. Okay, everybody knows this. If you actually take that as your starting point, you have the moon under her feet, the sun in her midst, or sort of in the womb area, 12 stars around her head, so on and so forth. If you actually do that and plug it into an astronomy program, it does produce a date. And the date, again, is really what freaks people out, because the date would be September 11th, 3 BC. It's the only time when not only these sets of circumstances, but if you put it in an astronomy program, there are other things going on at the same time that John does not mention, but to a pagan and to a Jew would have signaled something specific. For instance, above the woman, what's the next constellation? Okay, it's Leo, the lion, okay, the tribe of Judah.
Oh my goodness.
Inside the constellation Leo, according to this set of celestial events, the king planet, Jupiter, because it's the king planet because it's the biggest one in Greco-Roman astronomy, was aligned, it overlapped with the king's star, which is Regulus. So to a pagan, it would have been the sign of the birth of a divine king, but it's in the lion constellation. The dragon at her feet, again, if you plot this out on the ecliptic, there is a dragon figure. There's actually two of them. One is off the ecliptic. The ecliptic is the imaginary line that the constellations follow. In an astronomy program, it actually puts it on the screen for you. But there's one at the side, Hydra, but there's also another one directly under her feet that today we would call it Libra and Scorpio. But in the ancient world, they were combined as one and referred to as a dragon. Okay, it's waiting to devour the child. I mean, if you put all of these things in, all of the events, what's here in John and those conjunctions, it's an unusual event. And September 11th, 3 BC is the one you get, for antiquity, for anything in the first century. So you look at that, and right away people think, well, how in the world, we can't have that because, the New Testament has, King Herod, dying, a couple of years after. We know Herod died in 4 BC, so this is impossible. Actually, we don't know that Herod died in 4 BC. Again, on my website, I devoted a whole episode of my podcast on this. And there are 3, and I think maybe a 4th has come out since I did the podcast episode, peer-reviewed research articles that examine Herodian coins, because, coins, they put dates on them and other symbols. Herodian coins and also Herodian calendar that establishes the fact that there were actually a couple calendars in operation in Herod's time. And if you use one, Herod died in 1 BC. So he died after the birth of Jesus by 2 years, according to this. So the astronomy actually works out depending on which system you're using.
I see. Wow.
So it's the Herod death is no obstacle to this. But what's really fascinating is, well, that's a curiosity. Okay, September 11, 3 BC. Who cares? That date was also Tishri 1 in the Jewish calendar. Tishri 1 was the date that in Old Testament Israel that marked the inauguration of a new king, a new Israelite king. So it matches the same date. It was also the day of trumpets. You blow the trumpets when the new king arrives. I mean, are we starting to get a picture here? Not only that, but there are lots of things you can get into here. But that particular month, September, is also, in the Jewish calendar, it's also connected with being the harvest season. Okay. Now, in the Jewish calendar, Tishri 1 was not only the time of the inauguration of the king during the monarchy, but before that, and also afterwards, they thought Tishri 1 was the birthday of Noah. You say, why? Well, it's because they believed that the calendar began on the fourth day, which was, the day we get the time makers, according to Genesis, the sun, the moon, the stars, and all that. So that's when time reckoning begins. And if you start it at that date and then you start working forward, you have, again, the flood sequence. When that happens, Noah is 600 years old. The flood ends, everything dries up, and vegetation is restored just over a year after. So they believed that, according to their calendar, they know when the flood came in terms of the calendar. And if you go about 13 months afterwards, you land on Tishri 1. And since Noah started the whole thing out as 600 years old, and then he's 601, the rabbis taught that Noah's birthday was Tishri 1. That's a tradition. We can't establish that in Scripture. But if they believe that, and you have the birth of this child on Tishri 1, then Jesus and Noah share a birthday. Why is that important? Because what did Noah's survival herald? It heralded the end of the Nephilim, the end of the flood, all that sort of stuff. Noah was the new Adam.
Right.
Okay, he starts everything over. God repeats the Adamic covenant to him. He is the new Adam. Well, Jesus is a new Adam too, according to what Paul says. I mean, you have all of this imagery sort of just cluster around this passage and this event. So